So, hi, I'm Jack Clancy, the Head of Professional Services here at AccessPay, and I'm joined today by Sarah Lynch, who is the Implementation and Strategy Lead for Accounts Payable and Accounts Receivable at Places for People. Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
Obviously, we're in the middle of a global pandemic right now, which probably started around, in the UK in particular, around March. And, specifically, we are in lockdown 2.0, if you'd like to call it that, which started in November for the UK. Now, we've seen ourselves as a business that lots of customers have been negatively impacted by this pandemic, and they've had to change their ways of working. So, what changes have you had to make to accommodate remote working within Places for People?
We've had to make a couple of changes, to be honest. The majority of our staff are office-based staff. We do have some people that are more agile workers, but the majority of staff are office-based. So those staff have obviously had to resort to working from home. So we've had lots of challenges around ensuring that they had the right equipment, and where they didn't have the right equipment, purchasing that equipment and getting that out to them, making sure that everybody is online and can access everything that they need to.
Yeah.
But that seems to be the main trouble that we've had, is just making sure that everybody was up and running. Once everybody was up and running, we seem to be working quite well.
So, in all those changes that you made, was there any kind of specific changes you had to make within your own systems or within your finance function to accommodate that remote working?
Not really, to be honest. We've been on a bit of an automating journey since 2015 when we implemented our ERP system. So a lot of what we do was already very digitalized. So for us to revert to working from home, it didn't actually cause too many problems. A lot of our invoices are already received electronically. So it was only really the ones that still come through the post that we struggled with. So the first thing we did was contact those particular suppliers and say to them, you currently send your emails by post, and we're now not going to be in the office to receive these. So we really need you to send them via the electronic methods. Otherwise, we're just not going to have them to pay for you.
That's good to hear. So you've obviously, you guys have been working on this kind of automation and digitization of your processes prior to the pandemic. So it's not like you have future-proof for the pandemic's purpose, but work you put in, I think you said it was 2015, has made this current situation a little easier for you to handle as a business. So we rewind back to 2015, maybe even 2014. What were the drivers behind the decisions for Places for People to kind of embark on this automation and journey? What made you as a business decide to do that there and then?
I'm guessing that the reason why we decided to implement the new ERP system was that our old finance system, it was no longer fit for purpose.
Yeah.
Places for People had grown so much as an organisation that the current system that we were operating, it just didn't fit with us anymore. It didn't do everything that we wanted it to do. And we did want to move to a more streamlined digital way of working, and bringing in a top ERP system was the way to go.
Fantastic. So here at AccessPay, we are aware of these kind of ERP implementations, and we only really come into the process when a new ERP is installed is kind of later on. So we've seen that these implementations of big alting and all down to ERPs can take quite a significant amount of time. How long did it take Places for People to implement their new ERP?
I think the project itself ran for about 12 months, and the initial people started working about 12 months before it went live. A lot of the smaller modules didn't actually start getting involved until a little bit later down the line. So personally for me, I think I probably worked on the project for about 9 months before the implementation before it went live.
Fantastic. So from my perspective and what I know of these projects, that is a quick turnaround. Depending on what ERP you have, things can take 2 years. I myself have worked with one of our customers, and it was a 2.5, 3 year implementation. So to see that something was done as quick as 9 or 12 months is really good to hear. So In that sense, do you have any kind of hints or tips which could help other people kind of speed up their implementations or with a new ERP?
I think it's important to have a really robust project plan and to make sure that you've got the right people in the project. You've got the key people. It's not always about just the IT people, it's the business as well. I'm not an IT person, I am a finance person, but you need those kind of people involved in this because they're the people that have to use it. They have to be the ones that get the information out of it at the end of the day. They need to have input about what the system looks like and how the system works. So having the key people, the right key people involved from the beginning, I think is a really good way to start.
I think that's a very good point. I think sometimes the end user may be overlooked in these type of projects. It may be a decision that's made by more senior people within the business, and it could be made for cost reasons, for efficiencies, but ultimately the people who are impacted are yourself as the kind of the implementation strategy lead, and the people who will be using the system on a day-to-day basis. So it's good that you have that engagement from those people.
I think testing is really important as well. You can never do too much testing. We had so many rounds of testing, UAT, IST, UAT, UAT2, UAT3. It goes on and on, but it's better to get as much testing in as you can and find those problems. And if you can break it in testing, don't break it in live.
Exactly. I think that's what we prefer ourselves when we're working with our customers. We see a variance in the amount of testing that our customers may do. Some people are happy to just test with one file and then go ahead, whereas we come across organizations like yourself who make sure you test everything to the nth degree and make sure almost every situation possible is covered.
Yeah.
Going back to kind of the implementation of your new ERP, how much effort from yourself was involved in that? Did you have to project manage that yourself, or did you find that you needed a dedicated project manager for that?
No, we had a very strong project team that we worked with. So we had a project manager, we had a test manager, we had test script writers, we had consultants from Unit 4 themselves and also from an external consultancy. There was an awful amount of people that worked on this project, and my bit of it was a very small element of it.
Fantastic. So I think that's good to note that, because all those all that additional resource ultimately helps you deliver a successful project. You mentioned you turned it around in 9 to 12 months, which to me is success. From your perspective, was the deadline of getting this project up and running and completed in 9 to 12 months, was it a hard deadline? Was it something that you could afford to slip on?
I think it was a hard deadline, but I think everybody worked really well and really hard to make sure that we got this project across the line. There was no sort of, it can slip a week or it can slip 2 months. It was a hard deadline of the end of our tax year so that we could go live on the 1st of the new year with our new system. So there was no room for maneuvement.
Well, I think that's good. I think, having that hard deadline, it really does kind of motivate everyone to reach that goal. Time and time again, if we have a customer who joins us who doesn't actually have a deadline, they say, oh, well, whenever it's ready. We often find that there isn't that kind of that motivation to really meet that target. So it's good that you did have that hard deadline, because as you say, if you missed it, you might have been waiting another 12 months to reach your actual deadline. So now that Unit 4, we're still back in 2015, 2016, now that Unit 4 has been implemented, what were the next steps in your automation journey?
Once we had the ERP system in place, we had to look at it, make sure it was doing everything that we wanted it to do, and see if there was anything that we could improve upon. I think certainly from my side of things, you don't know what you don't know, and Unit 4 Business World, it's a very bespoke product. So we built it like the consultants suggested would work for us. And it's only when you start working with it and you think, that's not quite right, or that's not doing quite what I thought it was going to do, wouldn't it be better if it did this? And that's when you start reevaluating what you've done and going back over it almost and saying, right, well, I'm not happy with that bit. What can we do to change that? And because you have a more understanding of how the system works now, because you're using it, you're not just looking at config screens in the background, you're actually seeing what it does. You can understand how to change it to make it be better and be more of what you actually wanted. And sometimes you don't even know what you really want until you move on and you get something new and you think, well, that's great, but wouldn't it be better if it did this? And you just never stand still. You never stop. You always want to keep going, keep pushing, keep making it better and find the next big thing.
Well, I think that's that's absolutely fantastic. I think, that idea of constantly pushing and changing things to make it better for yourself, for your company, for the people who you work with, I think that's massively important. And, in this day and age now, we're in an unfortunate situation where, people have maybe had to go on furlough or been made redundant because of the pandemic. And, we're constantly being asked to do more with less. And I think pushing these systems that we have availability to use, pushing those and trying to get the most out of them or making them work better for us is something that is, massively important. And it's clear that it's something that places for people have recognised and are addressing continually throughout their kind of fine-tuning of their processes. So you've entered Unit 4, you're recognising better ways of working. So, obviously you've got this ERP system and you're being able to manage your internal processes. So when you need to create a payment file or a collection file, how is that delivered to your bank?
We have always used Bacs to deliver our payment runs to the bank, and that's to collect our DDs, to send our mandates because we're paperless, and also to send our payroll files and our supplier payment files. So we've used a couple of different systems in the past. We're currently using AccessPay, and that's been a big step forward for us to use AccessPay, and we're currently on a new journey with AccessPay at the moment. One of the projects I'm working on now is to implement a single payment run using a Bacs bureau. So instead of running, at the moment, we run 20 to 30 payment runs every week. And that's a 10-step process in our ERP system to run one single payment run.
Wow.
So yeah, it's very time consuming and labor intensive. So part of our ongoing goal to make efficiencies, to get better and to use technology better, this has sort of come along and we think, well, actually, why don't we implement a single payment run so that we can pay all 30 of these companies, but just run the process once? So that's what we're looking at the moment, and hopefully we're in the final stages of testing, so this should be live in the next couple of weeks, and it'll make a massive difference to the accounts payable team.
So yeah, you've mentioned there those differences that are made to the accounts payable team. You're possibly reducing a process that is 10 steps 20 or 30 times down to 10 steps once, which is huge. The amount of time and effort you're going to save there, and it's clear that wouldn't be something you couldn't do without the work you've done in Unit 4, but then also moving on and looking at your process and going, how can we make this better? Obviously, places for people are in the fortunate position to be a Bacs approved bureau, so you can make that step and you can submit all your files in one large group, which is very efficient as a process. So, you mentioned that there were some challenges that you faced during the pandemic, and I was keen to kind of go back to kind of the paperless aspect that you mentioned about receiving, some invoices electronically over email. For those suppliers that didn't kind of step in line and send your invoices over email, what did that mean for you as a business if you were receiving paper invoices to the office? What impact was that during the pandemic?
That did have quite a significant impact on us, to be honest. Because we're a housing association, we receive a lot of council tax bills, we receive a lot of utility bills for gas, electric, for when our properties are void. Local authorities and utility companies, they tend to send their bills through the post on paper, and they're quite notorious for not having the right systems to enable them to do it electronically. Some local authorities and some utility companies do, but quite a lot of them don't. And no matter how much we ask, they just say it's just not possible for us to do that. So they continue to send their bills to the office on paper. We didn't have anyone in the office apart from our caretakers. So our caretakers they'd gather up all the posts for accounts payable, and they would literally post that out to one member of the accounts payable team. So we have a separate team called Invoice Register that deals with council tax and utilities. So there's maybe 4 or 5 people in that team. So they would receive, one person in that team would receive 1 week's worth of post. It was on a rota basis. And then the next week, the next person would receive that week's worth of post. It then took them the next 4 weeks to work through that post and put it all onto the system for us until it was their turn to receive the post again. Unfortunately, the caretakers couldn't split out what was council tax, utilities against what was the rest of accounts payable post. So they literally got absolutely everything and then had to work their way through it and wheedle out the bits that they required and the bits that they didn't. With them being at home, they had no scanners, so we couldn't scan those invoices to the system to see an electronic copy like normal. They just had to key them into the system and then stack them on a pile until they got back in the office and were able to scan them back into the system.
So that's, that to me seems like a large amount of effort to process what may be, I don't know what percentage of your invoices that you process on a daily basis, but it's just a certain part of your function is having to go through this very onerous and manual process, because you're not in the office and certain people are unable to send electronic invoices. It's quite interesting because as an individual who uses utility companies and the council, I can receive my information electronically, but it seems like maybe, the corporate and the consumer get a completely different experience from these businesses and councils. So it's kind of interesting to hear the troubles that you have there, even though it's not good. It's interesting to see the different viewpoints on that as well. So
it is. I think it's worthwhile noting that it was a challenge that we came up against during this pandemic, and we had to find a very quick solution. We went into work on the Tuesday and we were told, you're going home tomorrow. So we had 24 hours notice to find out how to fix this, how to deal with this, what are we going to do? And that was the best that we could come up with. Luckily, we managed to get that team back into the office in July, and everything is running a bit more smoothly now. They've got their scanners, they've got their posts, so everything is going great. I think, it's a shame that the councils can't do it, and I get what you're saying. I know I get my council tax bill electronically as well, but we deal with pretty much every local authority in the country.
Yeah.
So
you're going to see a difference in service across, the breadth and width of the country. So that I guess that's something that can be expected. So on those invoices you receive, so you're obviously paying suppliers. That could be councils, utility companies. That the supplies will vary. I think one of the things that I'd be interested to see is, did you experience having experiences in making delayed payments to any of your suppliers on the back of this change in the paper invoices, or were you always able to deliver prompt payments to your suppliers?
I don't actually have the figures to hand about whether our payment terms slipped due to the pandemic. I would say that if it did slip, it didn't slip very far. We are a member of the Prompt Payment Code, which means that we voluntarily signed up to this code to ensure that we make prompt payment to all our suppliers, and we have to submit results to the Prompt Payment Code every quarter, I think it is, and tell them about our payment days and how quickly or not so we have paid our suppliers. We have not been struck off the Prompt Payment Code, so we must be making our payments in line still. So as far as I'm aware, everything has been running smoothly and we've been paying everybody on time as expected.
So I'd like to kind of understand a little bit more about the Prompt Payment Code, to be honest, because it's not something I'd really heard of before. So I guess this is some kind of incentive run by the UK government, where it expects or it requests that corporates pay their suppliers in a fair amount of time. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was originally set up to try and help small businesses. So when you've got a big supplier or a big organization, a bit like Places for People, they want to
Yeah.
make sure that we're fair to the smaller suppliers that we use. We might have sole traders that come and clean the windows at our estates, or we might have somebody who supplies stationery to us that is a small business. So we need to make sure that we help those businesses to stay afloat, that we don't squeeze them for their payment terms, and we make sure that they continue in business and that they have the right cash flow to enable them to do so. So that's part of what the prompt payment code is. It's about making sure that larger organizations, they're accountable and they make sure that they do make their payments on time and that they do support these smaller businesses. And I think it's a really great initiative.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You know, you do hear stories of some of these large corporates, you know, having very long payment terms, or they may offer their suppliers quicker payment terms, but it means that there will be a discount on the invoice as well. So it is good that things are kind of, or there is somebody out there trying to make things fair, especially for these smaller suppliers. You know, if you look in the news or you turn on the news, you turn on the radio nowadays, it's talking about the business impact the pandemic is having. And I think one of the areas that are being impacted quite severely are these small businesses. So, you know, using the payment code, it probably is helping a lot of these small businesses stay afloat in what is a very difficult time. So I think that is very good that an organisation like Places for People are part of that. So we've kind of discussed a bit of what's happened in the past. We've discussed what's happening today. You know, what is happening in the future for Places for People in kind of in your area, accounts payable and accounts receivable? Is there any specific things that you've got in your mind that you want to achieve in the next couple of years?
There's a couple of things that are running at the moment within Places for People, different projects doing different things. We're always trying to move forward. We're always trying to keep going, to improve on everything that we do, not just for our staff, but for our customers, and make sure that everybody gets what they need out of the systems and the people at Places for People. So we're currently working on the single payment run. That's going to be a massive impact when that finally goes live in the next couple of weeks. We have a new income management system that's coming in shortly. Hopefully, we're just starting the testing on that. There's a big project that's running at the moment around all of our IT systems, really. And we're just looking at what they are, how we can improve them. It's just a general sort of improvement plan.
No, well, that's really interesting because, you know, what is, you know, the current situation is deemed as something which is kind of really slowing businesses down and kind of hampering the progress. But what I'm seeing from this conversation with you, Sarah, is that actually Places for People have not only been able to work efficiently during the pandemic, but you've also been able to take a look at your business as a whole and think, how can we improve? It's not like you're just trying to stay afloat. You are actually trying to take things to the next level and improve even more. So I think that's a common theme that's coming through the conversation here, is that, you know, Places for People seem to be kind of very forward thinking when it comes to their area of business. And, you know, you are constantly striving to improve, which, you know, can only be good for you, your employees and your suppliers as well, as we mentioned about the prompt payments code. You mentioned employees, and I think, you know, when we've talked in the past, you've kind of about the current situation and, you know, what impact is this having on your employees, maybe, you know, outside of the general day-to-day tasks and roles and responsibilities that they have?
I think it's really important as a manager myself that I keep in touch with my staff at the moment, and I think that's the hardest thing for me. I'm used to sitting in an office with my team around me. I can talk to them, we have a laugh, we get the work done. And now all of a sudden I'm sitting on my own and they're sitting on their own. Some of my staff, they live alone. And it can be very isolating, especially during the lockdown phases that we've been through. I know during the first lockdown, everything was really, really strict. Everybody was staying inside, and people weren't even going out for walks and getting that fresh air and seeing the sunlight even. And I think trying to tackle that isolation and that loneliness with your staff, it's really difficult, trying to keep that motivation and look after their mental health as well. I mean, places for people we have mental health first aiders, and they've done a great job through this. They're constantly sending things to us, asking how we are, sending out little bits of things to try and cheer us up. As a manager, we've played games, we've played through the keyhole, catchphrase, we've done all different kinds of things. We recently did a power off a Pudsey for children in need, where we encouraged our staff to get out at lunchtime and take a walk, take a break, get up and walk away from your computer. I know I'm very guilty of sitting at my computer from 7 o'clock in the morning until 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, sometimes 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's only when the children start shouting to really be fed that, I get up and go and feed them. And you really do need that break. It's not just, it's mental, it's physical. You need to walk away, and trying to get that through to staff as well and motivate them and make sure that they're okay is possibly the hardest thing that I've had to deal with through this pandemic.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's something, that is probably will resonate with most people who are working remotely. Ourselves at AccessPay, we do have mental health first aiders. We try to organise company gatherings, even if it's via Zoom or some form of WebEx once a month. It's November now, and it's Christmas due time next month. What are people's plans? So, people are starting to think, what can we do remotely? And I think these types of things that are really important. I myself, I manage a team, and at the start of lockdown, I made sure that we put in daily checkpoints, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, just to kind of understand what people are going through, and just talking to them about what's happening in the day, what they want to achieve, and kind of try and simulate some of that kind of atmosphere you would have if you were sat at your desk together in the office. And I find that really works. But then I guess it's maintaining that same level of attention to that aspect in this current lockdown compared to the first lockdown. I know it was it was a lot longer and it's a lot more strict, and so I feel that we probably placed a bit more emphasis on these type of things in the first lockdown, and we haven't done as much in this lockdown. So it's something we need to kind of revisit and really still continue to try and ensure we are working on that kind of mental health aspect with our team members.
I think you're right, and I kind of find that with my team as well. During the first lockdown, I scheduled in with my team, we had daily calls at 12:30 every day, and the only rules of our daily calls at 12:30 is we don't talk about work. We talk about absolutely anything else apart from work. So whether that's your kids, your holiday plans, your house you've just moved into, what colour you're going to paint your wall, what you're having for your tea. And that went on for quite a while, and it was really great because I actually started to understand more about my team.
Yeah.
And because even though we're in the office together all the time, you do kind of have that chat, but it always goes back to work. But because this was very strict with, we're not talking about work, anything apart from work, you start to find out more about people, like, what was your greatest holiday? What was your favourite holiday? Where are you going to go when this ends, sort of thing. But now that we've moved forward a little bit, and now it feels like we've gone back a couple of stages, you're kind of ringing them, and those calls have slowed down. They're not every day, they're every couple of days now, because you run out of things to talk about as well.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I think
you're not going anywhere or doing anything. What have you got to tell anybody?
No, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the first pandemic, it was, or the first lockdown, sorry, it was very restricted, and like you say, everyone was kind of maybe had a bit more camaraderie say, well, we're going to get through this together, we need to do this. And now this kind of, we've kind of known this was coming, this second lockdown for a couple of weeks, it was, yes, aren't we going to do it? And then all of a sudden it's come along and everyone's gone, oh, we'll just bury our head in the sands. We know it's only going to be a month. So get through it by ourselves and not maybe put the same attention that we did previously in lockdown one, if we call it that. Sarah.
I think talking about it now with you has made me think, actually, I do need to get more into that. I need to go back to that. I need to find something to talk to them about a bit more. I need to find a new game to play with them because they might not want to play through the keyhole again.
No. And I think there's only so many quizzes you can do as well.
Yeah.
Once you've done them all, I think, you kind of start doing them again. Sarah, thank you very much for your time today. You've given us some really, really interesting insights into the journey you've been through in your kind of places for people and your digitization and automation. It's good to hear that you managed to turn around an ERP implementation in 12 months. I think that may be some form of record. I'll have to double check. But ultimately, you really helped me understand things from your perspective a little better. I always see things from the AccessPay side, but it's good to step into somebody else's shoes and see what they go through as well and understand some things from your side a little bit better as well.
Brilliant. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's a wrap.